Hi there, you can let your shoulders soften a little now. You've arrived, and for the next while, you don't have to do anything at all. This is science for sleepy minds, a quiet little corner of the universe where curiosity and rest are invited to curl up together. You don't have to choose between wanting to learn something beautiful and wanting to close your eyes. Here, both are welcome, and both are gently held. Maybe you're lying in bed, your phone or headphones nearby, the light dim or gone, the day still humming faintly in the back of your mind. Maybe it's been a long day or a long week, or just a long stretch of being human. Thoughts might still be buzzing, like small insects around a lamp. To-do lists, what-ifs, memories from years ago, or worries about tomorrow that haven't even had a chance to exist yet. None of that is wrong. None of it means you're doing anything badly. It just means your mind has been working hard. For now, though, you're invited to gently set all of that down. If you like, you can picture a simple shelf beside your bed, a quiet, sturdy shelf with a small box on it, the kind that closes with a soft, satisfying click. You can imagine placing each thought into that box one by one. You don't have to name them or fix them or organize them. You don't even need to look closely. Just place them inside. The unfinished conversations, the small embarrassments, the chores, the hopes, the questions. Put the lid on gently and let the shelf hold everything for you. Those thoughts will be there in the morning if you want them back. For now, you have permission to exist without solving anything at all. Tonight, we're going to travel very, very far without your body moving at all. We're going to drift back in time gently and slowly to visit the quiet birth of the universe. Not as a loud explosion or a frightening event, but as a gradual unfolding, like a dark flower opening its petals, one by one, across billions of years. We'll touch the earliest moments of space and time with soft, careful words. We'll wander through a warm, glowing fog, through the first whispers of light, through the first stars, waking up in the cosmic night. And you do not have to stay awake for all of it. In fact, it's perfectly okay if you only hear the first few sentences clearly, and the rest becomes a kind of distant, gentle murmur. You might drift in and out of attention, catching fragments here and there, like overhearing a story from another room while you're half asleep. That is completely fine. This is not a test, this is not a classroom, this is more like a lullaby made of galaxies and atoms. If at any point your eyes grow heavy, if your thoughts start stretching out into little dreams, you can let go. The universe will keep unfolding whether or not you are listening to every moment. You're not required to hold it all. Think of what you're hearing now as a river of words passing by the banks of your awareness. You can lean over and look at the water. You can trail your fingers through it. Or you can simply lie back and listen to the sound, knowing that the river will keep flowing whether you follow each ripple or not. If you fall asleep, you're not missing the story. That is the story working exactly the way it's meant to. Before we step fully into the sky, before we curl ourselves into the earliest pages of the cosmos, let's make sure your body knows it is safe and that it is allowed to rest. This time together is not about remembering facts or keeping track of details. It's about creating a soft space in your mind where science becomes something like a nightlight, glowing quietly in the corner of the room. If you want to support more nights like this, more quiet journeys into strange and beautiful ideas, you're always welcome to gently tap like or subscribe or simply remember to come back another evening when sleep feels far away. But there is no pressure at all. Even if you never touch a button, even if you only ever listen in the background and forget the words as soon as they fade, you are part of this space just by being here, breathing, resting, wondering a little. Let's meet your breath where it is. You don't have to change it yet. Just notice it. Notice the coolness of the air as it enters your nose or mouth, the slight warmth as you breathe out. Notice how the air moves on its own like a tide flowing in and out under a quiet night sky. For a moment, simply watch your breathing without trying to control anything. The body knows how to do this. It has been doing it your whole life. Now, if it feels comfortable, let your next breath in be just a little deeper than usual. No strain, no effort, just a gentle invitation for the lungs to fill a bit more. When you reach the top of that inhale, pause for a tiny moment, like a wave pausing before it begins to roll back. Then let your exhale be slightly longer than your inhale, as if your breath is a sigh melting into the pillow. Imagine that you're breathing out more than air, little traces of tension, small pieces of the day, drifting away with each long breath. We'll do that again, very softly. Breathe in, feeling your chest, your ribs, maybe even your belly gently rise. Hold for a heartbeat, and then breathe out, letting the air drift away, slow and unhurried, like mist fading in early sunlight. With every longer exhale, imagine that the extra length is space for tightness to slip out of you. Little knots of effort or worry dissolve and float away. Once more, take a slow, easy inhale, only as deep as feels pleasant. Pause at the top, and then let out a long, soft exhale, as if you're pouring your weight into the mattress beneath you, sinking just a fraction deeper into comfort. When you're ready, you can let your breathing return to whatever rhythm it wants. You don't have to keep it deep or slow, just notice the rise and fall in a friendly, curious way. As your breath continues at its own pace, will invite different parts of your body to loosen, like knots in a rope gently untying themselves. You can start with your forehead. If you like, imagine that someone is smoothing a thumb gently across your brow, erasing little lines of worry and effort. Let your eyebrows drift down and relax. Let the space between them soften. Your eyelids can rest heavily over your eyes, like curtains drawn across a window at night. Your cheeks can loosen. Your mouth can settle into whatever shape feels natural. You don't have to smile. You don't have to perform anything. Your face is allowed to simply be. Let your jaw unclench. If your teeth are touching, you might let them float apart slightly, as if the lower jaw has suddenly grown tired of holding on and is now resting in the cradle of gravity. Notice your neck, the back of it, the sides, the front. If there is any tightness there, imagine it dissolving like a sugar cube in warm tea, slowly breaking apart and sending warmth through the muscles. Your throat can feel open and easy, as if there is just a little more space for air and for calm. Now bring your attention to your shoulders. Many of us carry whole days on our shoulders, quiet loads of conversation, responsibility, and emotion. For this moment, you're allowed to take that invisible backpack off. Let your shoulders slide away from your ears, dropping down and back. Feel them becoming heavy, fully supported by the bed beneath you. You no longer have to hold yourself upright. The surface under you is doing that now. Let this feeling of release move down your arms, through your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms. Notice your hands however they are resting. Palms up or palms down, open or curled. There is no right position. Whatever feels easiest is fine. Let your fingers soften from the base to the tips, as if each finger is exhaling in relief. Bring your attention back to your chest for a moment. Notice again how it rises and falls with each breath. Somewhere inside, your heart has been beating all day, steadily and loyally, whether you noticed it or not. You don't have to do anything to make it continue. Let your awareness rest there for just a few seconds, appreciating that quiet, tireless rhythm, and perhaps silently thanking your body for carrying you through another day. Let your chest soften, your upper back widen onto the bed. Your ribs expand with each inhale like a calm bellows and relax, with each exhale like a wave sinking back into the sea. Then gently let your attention move down into your belly. There is no need to hold it in, no need to control anything. When you breathe in, let your belly rise a little, like a small moon lifting over the horizon. When you breathe out, let it fall, like that sage of the same moon sinking gently back into the ocean. Each wave up and down reminds you that you are alive, here, and safe. Now, drift downward to your hips and lower back. If there is pressure or tightness there, you can imagine it softening even just a little, as if the muscles are untying themselves one thread at a time. Feel your pelvis resting heavily on the mattress, fully supported. There is nothing for those muscles to hold right now. Let the weight of your body be completely accepted by the bed. Allow this relaxation to continue into your thighs, the tops and the backs, all the way to your knees. Your legs have carried you from place to place today, maybe across rooms, across streets, upstairs, down hallways. Whatever the distance, they've been quietly doing their job. For now, they're allowed to be heavy and still, like stones resting at the bottom of a clear, gentle lake. Let that stillness move down through your calves and shins, into your ankles and feet. Feel your heels resting, your arches relaxing, your toes softening and spreading, no longer braced against the floor or against your shoes. Your whole body is now invited to rest, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. If you'd like, you can imagine your body floating now in a quiet, dark ocean, completely supported. The water is exactly the right temperature, neither cold nor hot, just perfectly comfortable. You don't have to swim or kick or move. The water holds you up with infinite patience. Above this calm ocean, the sky is very clear and very dark, sprinkled with gentle stars. Each thought that appears in your mind can be seen as one of those stars. Some stars shine brightly and grab your attention. Some flicker and fade before you can look closely. You don't have to chase them. You can watch them if you want, or you can let them blur into a soft haze of light. If new thoughts appear, they're just new stars joining the sky. The sky doesn't try to stop them. It simply holds them quietly and without effort. As your body rests in this imagined ocean, and your mind looks up at this soft, starry sky, we can gently widen the frame. Just as your breath moves in and out without you needing to command it, the universe itself once moved from a tiny, dense beginning into the vast, spacious cosmos that surrounds you now. Tonight, we'll float along that expansion, not urgently, but like a leaf on a slow, gentle river. We'll begin right where you are. Imagine for a moment your actual room again. The shadows on the walls, the shape of the furniture, the way your blanket folds and curves. You might notice a faint glow from a screen, a small line of light under a door, or perhaps the room is almost completely dark. You can feel the weight of your body against the mattress, the way your pillow supports your head, the warmth gathered around you. Even here, inside this familiar space, you're resting on a planet that is quietly spinning in space. Just as you lie still, the Earth is turning, carrying you through the universe at high speed, so smoothly that you don't feel the movement at all. Now, in your imagination, picture a window in your room. It might be a real window you know well, or one you invent just for tonight. Imagine it opening onto the night. Outside, the air is cool and gentle. The sky above is a deep velvety blue-black, scattered with stars that shine with a soft, steady light. They do not shout or blaze or flash. They simply exist, calm and constant, like tiny lanterns hung in an enormous dome. The darkness between them is not empty. It is full of distance, of silence, of ancient journeys of light that have been travelling for unimaginable spans of time to arrive at this moment and softly meet your eyes or your imagination. If you like, you can picture yourself standing at that window, hands resting on the sill, looking up. You might feel small, but not in a frightening or lonely way. More like a small pebble at the edge of a vast, peaceful lake. The lake is large, yes, but it is also quiet and gentle, and you are part of its shore. Now let your imagination step outside the room entirely. Imagine that you begin to float upward, as if some invisible current is lifting you like a feather. You rise above the rooftop, above the streets, above trees and buildings and everything familiar. Below, the patterns of city lights or rural roads spread out quietly, like constellations turned upside down on the ground. As you drift higher, you pass through the thin air of the upper atmosphere. The air grows darker, the sky deepens, and the curve of the Earth starts to become visible beneath you. From here, our planet looks like a sleeping giant, wrapped in a thin, luminous blanket of air. Daylight bathes one side, while night covers the other. A slow rotation that has been going on long before you were born and will continue long after. High above the clouds, you can see the stars even more clearly now. You might see the moon too, a pale, calm companion, Its surface holds the record of ancient events, but tonight we are not thinking about impacts or drama. We are simply visiting the moon as a quiet, watchful lantern hanging in the sky. Farther out, the planets circle the sun in their silent paths. Each world has its own temperatures, its own landscapes, its own gentle strangeness. We drift past the orbit of the moon, past the invisible highways where satellites circle our planet, little tools and messengers humans have placed in space. We keep moving slowly, without effort, letting the mind float. The Earth becomes smaller behind us, a glowing blue marble suspended in a dark sea. Ahead and around us, the sun glows, not as a harsh blaze but as a comforting hearth, a steady fire that has burned for billions of years and will continue to burn for billions more. Around it, the planets circle like quiet dancers in a vast, invisible choreography. Beyond this familiar family of worlds, there are other stars, other systems, millions upon millions of them, each with its own orbits and its own possibilities. If we zoom out even farther in imagination, the sun becomes just one of countless points of light in the swirling disk of the Milky Way galaxy. Our galaxy, seen from afar, would look like a soft spiral, its arms made of countless stars and clouds of gas, all held together by gravity and by mysterious dark matter that we cannot see directly but can feel through its effects. Beyond the Milky Way there are other galaxies, like islands scattered across an immense ocean. Some are small and faint, some enormous and bright, some tidy spirals, some more irregular and patchy. Each one is a slow, patient whirl of light and time. The space between galaxies is not just empty nothingness. It is a quiet, expanding fabric, like a vast, dark sea that has been stretching since the universe was very young. When you look up at the night sky from your room, you are seeing the surface of this ocean, the distant shores of countless islands of stars. But there was a time when this ocean was different. A time when there were no stars, no galaxies, no planets, no nights like this one. A time when everything we now see was still blended into a simpler state. The cosmos we see now, full of structure and light, did not appear all at once. It unfolded gradually, like a story told over an unimaginable number of chapters. When we move backward through that story, we eventually arrive at a time when everything was much closer together. Hotter, denser, more uniform. Not a bomb exploding in the middle of empty space, but space itself in a very different condition. When people say the birth of the universe, they're often talking about that early, dense, hot stage. The word universe can feel huge and heavy. In the gentlest sense, you can think of the universe simply as everything. All of space and all of time, every bit of matter and every burst of energy, every star and every tiny grain of dust, every atom in your body, every thought passing through your mind right now. If that feels like too much to picture, that's perfectly okay. You can instead imagine the universe as a vast quilt. Each patch of the quilt is a place. One patch is your room, another is our sun, another is a distant galaxy, another is empty space between clusters of galaxies. The patches come in many colours and sizes, all stitched together into a single enormous fabric. You and I, and everything we know, are small patterns on one patch of that quilt. Tonight, we're simply tracing a finger along the seams, curious about how the whole quilt came to be sewn together. Many people grow up hearing the phrase Big Bang. It might sound loud in your mind, like fireworks or a sudden crash, and it's natural to picture a tiny ball of matter bursting in the middle of empty blackness, flinging pieces outward into the void. That image is common, but it's not quite what modern cosmology suggests. In the view that astronomers and physicists work with, the Big Bang was not an explosion inside space. It was space itself changing and expanding. In the early universe, everything was extremely hot and extremely dense everywhere, not just in one place. Imagine a very small, tightly crumpled balloon, every part of its surface close to every other part, the material thick and folded. As the balloon begins to expand, every point moves away from every other point. There's no single center where the bang happens. The whole surface stretches together. Or, if you prefer an even gentler picture, imagine a piece of fabric crumpled in your hands. The folds are pushed together, wrinkled and dense. When you start to pull on the edges, the fabric gradually opens. The folds loosen, the surface smooths. Any small marks on the cloth find themselves moving away from each other as the space between them grows. That slow, steady unfurling is closer to how cosmologists think of the universe's early expansion. And it isn't just space out there that changed. Time itself is woven together with space like threads crossing in a single cloth. We sometimes call it space-time. When we talk about the beginning of the universe in scientific terms, we're talking about a time when this fabric of space-time was extremely compressed and extremely hot. If you imagine your life as a book, each moment is a page. Before you were born, there were already many pages. Your family's history, the history of your country, the story of humans evolving, of forests growing, of mountains rising and wearing down. If you keep flipping back, you reach pages about early Earth, about the formation of the sun, and about the galaxy as a much younger place. Cosmology keeps turning the pages back further, to times before Earth existed, before the Milky Way fully took shape, to times when there were no stars yet, only hot, dense matter and radiation filling space. If you keep going back in this book, eventually the pages become faint and blurry. The ink smudges, the letters run together, and our current understanding of physics no longer tells us clearly what is happening. Somewhere there, near that hazy region, lies what we casually call the beginning. Were there pages before that point? Written in some other way? Was there another chapter, another clear story, another kind of time? Right now we don't know, and that not knowing is okay. It's a gentle mystery, like a horizon wrapped in mist or sea, no matter how close you walk toward it. What we do know comes from clues the universe has left behind, like footprints in sand. When scientists observe the way distant galaxies move, how their light is stretched, how fast they are receding from us and from each other, they can work backward to infer that the universe was once much more compact. They see an ancient afterglow of light, a faint uniform glow across the sky, which we'll talk about more later, that matches what you'd expect from a hot, dense early stage. They study how much hydrogen and helium and other light elements exist out there, and those amounts agree with what we'd expect if the universe had once been incredibly hot and then expanded and cooled. You, lying here in the dark, don't need to keep track of any of those details. You don't need to remember numbers or formulas. You can simply picture the universe as a patient storyteller, leaving traces scattered in the sky and in the matter all around us. And picture people with curious minds slowly learning how to read those traces. Humans have always told stories about beginnings. Before telescopes, before physics, before the language of mathematics became precise, we looked up at the night and wondered, where did all this come from? Why is there something rather than nothing? Different cultures created different answers. Cosmic eggs, world trees, God shaping land from water, beings weaving reality from threads of sound or breath. Modern cosmology is another way of answering the same old questions, using measurements, equations, and observations instead of mythic characters. It creates a story that is always being checked and refined, always tested against what the sky itself is telling us. Even though this story is built from careful data and intricate mathematics, it still has room for wonder and comfort. Hearing it can create a strange sense of peace. Behind your life, behind your memories, behind the little concerns that sit in that imaginary box on the shelf by your bed, there is a long, continuous thread. It stretches from your breathing chest all the way back through the formation of Earth, through the births and lives of stars, through the first solar light spreading across space, to a universe just beginning to unfold. You are part of that thread. You are made of its fibers. Right now you're allowed to rest within it. As your body grows heavier, as your breath moves gently in and out, We will, in time, drift closer toward the earliest instance our physics can talk about, where conditions were so extreme and so unfamiliar that they sit at the edge of our understanding. But we will go there very slowly, very softly, never rushing, always remembering that if sleep arrives first, it is welcome. For now, it is enough to hold this simple picture. A universe that was once smaller, hotter and denser, gradually expanding, cooling and smoothing out, and eventually giving rise to galaxies, stars, worlds, and finally to you, a sleepy mind listening in the dark, resting at the gentle edge of an enormous unfolding story. If you're still awake, you might notice that your body has settled a little more than before. The edges of the day may feel softer now, the thoughts a bit farther away, like voices in another room. And if you drifted off for a while and are only just now surfacing, that's okay too. You don't need to remember where we were in the story. You don't need to rewind anything. You can simply arrive right here, in this moment, with your head on the pillow and your breath moving gently in and out, and we'll just keep going together, as if we never paused at all. We were talking about the universe as a long story, one that stretches from you lying in bed tonight, all the way back through stars and galaxies and eventually into a time when everything was much hotter and much more compressed. Scientists can follow that story backward using clues scattered through space like footprints in a very ancient snow. But as we go further and further back, there comes a point where the snow is disturbed, where the trail is not so clear. Our best theories start to blur, and the picture becomes hazy. This very earliest stage is sometimes called the Planck era, named after a scientist who helped us understand how energy behaves in tiny, tiny amounts. It's a time so early, so unimaginably close to the beginning, that it's almost more of an idea than a picture. We're talking about the universe when it was less than a tiny fraction of a second old, a sliver of time so small that our usual language doesn't quite fit. If the entire history of the cosmos was squeezed into a single day, says Orr, this early moment would pass long before the first second even ticks. You don't need to remember that name or that scale. Instead, you might simply imagine the earliest universe as the smallest, quickest heartbeat you can conceive of. A bright, compact heartbeat of reality itself. In that heartbeat, the temperature and density would have been far beyond anything we can reproduce or truly imagine. The usual rules that describe gravity and particles and forces begin to blur there, like letters melting at the edge of a page. That's why scientists say we don't really know what the universe was like at that first tiniest instant. The face of reality is turned slightly away from us there, as if it's shy. Rather than trying to force that door open, most cosmologists choose to start the story just after that earliest unknowable moment, when the universe is still very hot and very dense, but when our mathematical descriptions begin to work again. So you can let that first flicker remain a mystery if you like. You don't need to see it clearly. You can just imagine a small, brilliant hush at the very beginning, too bright and too compact for our minds to hold. Even in that early hot state, the universe wasn't perfectly uniform. At a tiny, tiny level, there were small variations, little ripples in how energy was arranged. These are called quantum fluctuations, but you don't have to befriend the term. Instead, you might picture a very soft blanket, one that looks smooth from far away, but if you run your fingers across it, you feel subtle changes in thickness, little rises and dips in the fabric. These gentle irregularities are like the first hints of structure, the first small differences that much later would grow into galaxies and clusters and the web of matter spread across the cosmos. Another way to picture it is as an ocean made entirely of energy, shimmering and restless. On the surface of that ocean, tiny ripples keep appearing and disappearing, too small to notice unless you look very closely. For a long time they just flicker in and out. But then, as the universe evolves, some of those ripples get stretched and preserved, becoming the seeds from which the large-scale structure of the universe grows. It's a little like the way the faintest breeze across a field of tall grass can, over time, create patterns in how the stalks lean and bend. When we talk about these early moments, it might be easy to imagine something violent or chaotic. Words like explosion and fury sometimes sneak into descriptions. Here, we'll choose gentler language. Instead of violence, think of intensity. Instead of chaos, think of richness. The early universe was hot and dense and full of activity. But you are infinitely far removed from those conditions. They are not around you now. They are not inside your room. They are billions of years and billions of light years away, preserved only as a kind of memory in the sky. Where you are, there is only the calm of this moment, your blanket, your breath, the quiet presence of your own awareness. And even in that intensity, there is something comforting in the idea that the universe, from its earliest times, contained tiny differences that would eventually become everything we see. The places where matter would gather into stars, the regions that would become galaxies, the little variations that would allow complexity to form. In a way, the first hints of your existence were already woven into those ripples, long before there were atoms, long before there was Earth. You are very much a late chapter in the story, but some of the letters that would one day spell you were already inked into the earliest patterns. Of course, we still don't know if this early state was truly the first chapter. Maybe there was something before it. Maybe there was another kind of universe or a cycle or a larger structure out of which our cosmos blossomed. Right now, those ideas are possibilities, not certainties. You can imagine them as a closed door at the end of a long hallway. The light from underneath the door is intriguing, but we haven't opened it yet. It's not a threatening door, it's just part of the house we haven't explored. One day, perhaps, our theories will knock gently and turn the handle. For tonight, it's enough to know that questions still exist, and that it's perfectly okay for them to remain unanswered while you sleep. After this earliest murky instant, many cosmologists think the universe went through a brief but extraordinary period of stretching called inflation. If you picture the cosmos as that crumpled piece of fabric in your hands, inflation is the quiet, sudden moment when you pull your hands apart and the fabric smooths very quickly. It happens faster than any normal expansion we see today. But in our story, we don't need to feel the speed. We just need to imagine the effect. Wrinkles smoothed out, irregularities spread thin, everything becoming more even on large scales. Why would scientists propose such a strange-sounding idea? Because when we look at the universe now, on very large scales, we see something surprisingly uniform. No matter which direction we point our telescopes, the average properties of the cosmos look almost the same. It's as if you took a loaf of dough and rolled it out so evenly that every slice, taken from anywhere, had nearly the same texture. Inflation is a way of explaining how the universe became so smooth and balanced so early on. You might imagine the universe at that time as a small, dense, glowing region of space-time filled with energy. For a brief instant, according to the theory, this region expands incredibly rapidly. Like a tiny bubble that swells to a much bigger size in a fraction of a blink, this stretching takes those tiny quantum ripples and pulls them across enormous distances. The irregularities don't vanish. They're preserved, but now they're spread out across the cosmos, like faint patterns in a rug that has been unrolled. The details of how inflation works involve fields and potentials and other technical words that are not necessary here. Remember, your task is not to keep up with the mathematics. Your only task is to rest, and, if you like, to hold a soft image of what's happening, a tiny, bustling universe suddenly relaxing into a larger, smoother one, its small wrinkles pulled wide. The little ripples that once fluctuated on the tiniest scales become subtle variations in density across vast regions of space. Later, gravity will gently use those variations as a kind of map, pulling matter together more strongly where there is just a bit more of it, letting structures slowly emerge. There's something soothing in the idea of this smoothing. The early universe, under inflation, tends toward regularity, toward symmetry, toward an almost serene sameness on large scales. You can imagine it as a great sheet of space being lovingly ironed flat, all the big lumps and folds eased away. On that even canvas, only the faintest of patterns remain, just enough to guide future growth. And there might be a small comfort in knowing that even though your own life might feel wrinkled, uneven, full of ups and downs and unexpected folds, on the larger scales the cosmos leans toward balance. Galaxies cluster, yes, but the overall picture is remarkably uniform when averaged over huge distances. In the middle of personal storms, it can be strangely reassuring to remember that you are drifting through a universe that, in many ways, is calm. As inflation comes to an end in this story, the energy that was driving that rapid expansion transforms. It turns into a sea of particles and radiation, into heat and light. The universe becomes a hot, glowing place filled with a mix of fundamental ingredients. If you imagine being present, just as a thought, not as a body, you would find yourself in a kind of luminous fog. There is no empty, dark space yet. No stars. No planets. Instead, everywhere you look is filled with a thick, bright haze of particles and light, all mingled together. The temperature is incredibly high, far beyond anything you could touch or survive, but remember, you are not actually theirs. You're safe in your bed, billions of years away from this scene. In your imagination, you're simply watching from a distance, like looking at an old photograph of someone else's childhood. The universe is young, full of energy, and everything is close and tightly linked. That's why cosmologists sometimes call this phase a cosmic soup, or plasma. The distinction between light and matter is blurred, as particles and radiation interact constantly. Within this glowing soup, different kinds of particles appear and vanish, forming and annihilating in a dance guided by the laws of physics. You can imagine tiny sparks flashing in and out, like fireflies flickering inside a bright mist. There are particles that will eventually assemble into familiar things, protons, which can join with neutrons to form nuclei, electrons, which will someday settle into orbits around those nuclei to form atoms. At this stage, though, these ingredients are immersed in a bath of light, colliding, scattering, changing course. As the universe continues to expand, it also cools. The cooling is like a slow cosmic exhale. With every moment, the average energy drops a bit. In that cooling, certain processes become possible. Protons and neutrons, two types of particles inside atomic nuclei, begin to join together, forming simple combinations like hydrogen and helium nuclei. This is called nucleosynthesis, but you don't need the term. You can simply picture the universe as a cosmic kitchen preparing its first recipe. The ingredients are basic, but they are crucial. Hydrogen is like the flower of the cosmos, simple and abundant. Helium is like a gentle, lighter ingredient formed in smaller amounts. Under the right conditions, these particles bind together, held by the strong force deep in their cores. You can imagine tiny beads snapping into place along invisible threads, building the first stable structures inside the soup. They are not yet full atoms, because electrons are still roaming freely, bumped constantly by the intense light. But the foundation is set. The universe has mixed its batter, so to speak, and placed it in an oven of expansion and cooling. Over vast stretches of time, the recipe will continue, eventually giving rise to the complex elements we know. At the same time, gravity has already begun its quiet work. Even in this early hot phase, slight differences in density, those faint patterns stretched out by inflation, mean that some regions have just a little more matter than others. Gravity tugs more strongly where there is more stuff. The tug is tiny at first, almost imperceptible compared to the frenetic interactions of particles and light. But gravity is patient. It doesn't need to hurry. Over millions of years, its influence will grow, gently gathering matter into clumps. You can think of this as a long, slow tug of war between expansion and attraction. On one side, the expansion of space is pulling everything apart, stretching distances. On the other, gravity is trying to draw matter together, to form groups and structures. Neither side is frantic. It's not a violent struggle. It's more like two steady hands, each shaping the cosmic clay in a different way. The result is not collapse and not complete dispersal, but a complex, beautiful arrangement. Galaxies, clusters, filaments, and voids, all emerging from this quiet balancing act. For a long time, though, the universe remains a glowing fog. The light is trapped, constantly scattered by free electrons, unable to travel far without being bounced in a new direction. It's a bit like trying to see through very thick clouds or fog on Earth. Light doesn't make it far before being redirected, so the view is opaque. The cosmos at this stage is bright on the inside but not yet transparent. There is a sense of waiting in this picture. Even though the universe itself simply follows its physical laws, as it expands and cools further, a threshold will eventually be crossed. There will come a time when the temperature drops low enough for electrons to settle down, joining the nuclei that have already formed. When that happens, neutral atoms will appear and the fog will begin to clear. Light will finally be able to travel long distances without constant interruption. For now, in our story, we are still in that luminous haze, watching the ingredients assemble, watching the universe slowly prepare to show us its first clear face. You don't need to hold all the stages in perfect order. You don't need to carve them into memory. Instead, you can let them blur gently into one another, as if you are gliding through them in a slow dream, a tiny hot heartbeat of a cosmos, a rapid smoothing and stretching, a warm, glowing fog, the first simple building blocks coming together. As you listen, your mind might drift. You might think of something entirely unrelated, or you might lose track of the words and only feel the rhythm of the voice. If that happens, there is nothing wrong. You can always come back for another pass through the story some other night if you wish. For this night, your only real assignment is to rest. The universe can look after itself. It has been doing so quite well for a very long time. If you're still awake enough to notice your body, you might feel that it has grown heavier on the mattress, yet your breath has become quieter. Perhaps your eyes feel less inclined to open. Perhaps they are already closed. In the background of all of that, the early universe continues to evolve in our story, cooling and expanding, carrying within it the earliest hints of galaxies and stars, and, eventually, the quiet room where you now lie listening, one small and precious patch in an immense unfolding quilt. If you're still with me, awake or half awake, you might notice that the universe in your mind is hovering in a very particular moment. In our story, the cosmos is still a warm, glowing fog full of light and particles tangled together. The details may have blurred a little while you listened, or while you drifted away for a while. That's perfectly all right. You don't have to remember which phase came first or what anything is called. You can simply let yourself drop back into the feeling of a young universe, bright and dense, slowly expanding and gently cooling. As this expansion continues in our story, something important begins to happen. The temperature of the universe keeps dropping, like a hot drink left on a windowsill to cool down. At first, it's far too hot for certain structures to form. Electrons and the nuclei of atoms can't settle together. The light bouncing around is too energetic and keeps knocking them apart. But with every cosmic heartbeat, the average energy decreases a bit. Slowly, conditions move toward a threshold, a kind of cosmic just right, where something new can appear. Eventually, roughly a few 100,000 years after that earliest hot state, the universe crosses that threshold. It has cooled enough that electrons can join with the hydrogen and helium nuclei that formed earlier. These unions create the first stable neutral atoms. It's a quiet, profound change. You might imagine countless tiny pairs joining hands, finding partners they could never keep before, because it was simply too hot and chaotic. Now, temperatures are low enough for these partnerships to last. When those electrons settle into place, something else happens at the same time. The fog begins to clear. Before this moment, free electrons were constantly scattering light, bouncing photons off in new directions so that light couldn't travel far without being redirected. Once electrons are bound into atoms, they stop knocking the light around so much. Space becomes transparent in a new way. Light is finally free to wander long distances, to stream in straight lines instead of being trapped in a bright, tangled hall of mirrors. If you imagine yourself floating in that young universe, you might have felt surrounded by a glowing mist, unable to see very far. Then as atoms form, it's like the mist thins out, revealing a wide horizon. The glow doesn't vanish, it simply starts travelling, fanning out across expanding space. The universe takes a kind of deep breath and lets its first light go. That ancient light is still here. Over billions of years, as the universe expanded, the light stretched. Its wavelengths lengthened, its colour shifted from something like blinding brightness down into a faint, cool glow in the microwave part of the spectrum. This is what we now call the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the early universe. It fills all of space. No matter which direction you look, if you have the right kind of instrument, you can detect this soft, ancient radiation. You can think of it as the universe's baby picture, a snapshot of the cosmos when it first became transparent, when light could finally stream freely. Telescopes and satellites have captured this glow and turned it into maps, images showing tiny differences in temperature and density across the sky. Those tiny differences match the patterns we'd expect from the ripples we talked about earlier, the small variations in the early universe that inflation stretched across vast distances. It's as if we can see the faint fingerprints of those first ripples, frozen into the light itself. Of course you don't need to see any of these maps right now. Well, you don't need to visualize false colors or think about measurements. It's enough to know that above your room, beyond the longest atmosphere, past the stars, there is an almost perfectly uniform bath of ancient light surrounding everything. Some of the static between radio stations, some of the faint noise in old television screens, used to be partially due to this microwave background, a quiet trace of the early universe, whispering softly in the spaces between our channels. There is a kind of comfort in that, isn't there? Whether you are aware of it or not, you're always bathed in this relic light. As you lie here, your body resting in the dark, your skin and the walls and the planet itself are all gently soaked in this ancient glow. You're wrapped not only in blankets and in air, but in a faint echo from when the universe was very young. You don't feel it, but it is there, as constant and gentle as a lullaby that has been playing for almost 14 billion years. After this light is released, the universe enters a new stage, sometimes called the Cosmic Dark Ages. The name can sound dramatic, but in our sleepy story it's more like a long, peaceful night before dawn. The glow of the background radiation is everywhere, but there are no new sources of light yet. No stars have formed. There are no galaxies shining, no planets reflecting starlight. Space is filled mainly with neutral hydrogen and helium atoms, spread out and growing farther apart as expansion continues. Imagine a vast, quiet ocean of gas, almost perfectly uniform. There are tiny differences in density, slight variations carried over from those early ripples, but nothing yet that you would see as bright points or structures. The universe is cooling, expanding, and gently waiting. If we could float there in some magical way, we might see a faint, dim afterglow in all directions, but no individual stars to fix our gaze upon. It is a calm, extended darkness full of potential. During this time, gravity is still doing its slow, persistent work. Those small differences in density, regions where there is just a little more matter than average, begin to matter more. Under the influence of gravity, slightly denser areas pull in nearby gas more strongly, becoming denser still. Very gradually, over millions and millions of years, these regions grow into clumps. The clumps draw in more material, their gravity deepening like small dimples in a stretchy fabric. You can imagine dew forming on blades of grass in the early morning. At first, the moisture is spread thinly across the surface, but in some spots, tiny droplets begin to gather. Those droplets attract more water, growing rounder and heavier. In a similar way, the early universe's gas begins to pool into denser regions, invisible droplets in a vast dark field. As these clumps grow more massive, the gas inside them is pulled inward. Falling inward raises the temperature, compressing and heating the material at the center. Over time, some of these clumps become dense and hot enough to trigger something remarkable: nuclear fusion. Hydrogen begins to fuse into helium, releasing energy. The first stars are born. These first stars are not like the ones you see out your window tonight. Many were likely larger, brighter, and shorter lived than our sun. But in our story, we don't need to focus on the exact details. We can simply picture the universe, after a very long, peaceful darkness, lighting its first small fires. Tiny points of starlight flicker on in the deep night, scattered here and there among the growing clumps of gas. If you imagine watching from outside, you might see the universe as a dark room where after a long wait someone lights a single candle, then another and another, until scattered flames appear across the space, each one gently pushing back the darkness around it. Over time, these first stars gather into larger structures. The gravitational pull of many stars and gas clouds together forms the earliest galaxies, swirling collections of light and matter, turning slowly in the dark. These galaxies might be messy at first, not the elegant spirals we picture on posters. They are young, still assembling, still interacting, sometimes merging. But over time, they evolve. Gravity smooths some of the chaos into more stable forms. Gas continues to fall into them, fueling new generations of stars. The universe, once nearly featureless, becomes a tapestry of luminous islands, galaxies scattered across an expanding sea of space. The light from these early stars doesn't just shine, it also changes the surrounding gas. Remember that during the Dark Ages, space was filled with neutral atoms, hydrogen and helium with their electrons settled into place. The high-energy light from the first stars begins to knock some of those electrons free again, turning the gas into a more ionized state. This process, spread out over vast regions and long periods, is called reionization. In our gentle telling, you can think of it as fog thinning in the presence of a slowly rising sun. At first, the universe is like a landscape covered in a very thin, subtle mist. As more and more stars form and shine, their light seeps into the gas around them, altering it, making it more transparent to light. The cosmic fog that once obscured long-distance views becomes clearer. The universe opens its eyes wider. Light travels farther. The stage is set for the rich structures we see today: luminous galaxies, clusters, and the delicate cosmic web connecting them. There is something deeply soothing about this cosmic dawn. After a long dark quiet, the universe does not erupt all at once into blinding brightness. It brightens slowly. For hundreds of millions of years, stars and galaxies multiply, filling the darkness with more and more soft glow. If you imagine the entire timeline speeded up into a single long sunrise, it would be the gentlest imaginable one, no sudden blaze, just a gradual easing from blackness to a patterned starlit sky. You may notice how similar this is to the pattern of a day in your own life. You sleep through the night, the world outside your window changing while you rest. Dawn doesn't arrive all at once. Light grows a little at a time. Shadows soften, shapes emerge. The universe, on its own enormous scale, went through something similar. A long night, a slow sunrise. Your own cycles of sleeping and waking are small echoes of that larger rhythm. Within the galaxies that form in this brightening universe, the story continues. Stars are not just lights, they're also factories. Inside their cores, under extreme pressure and temperature, hydrogen fuses into helium and helium into heavier elements. Over many lifetimes of stars, these processes build up the ingredients for more complex matter: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, and many others. The universe, through its stars, is slowly cooking the material that will one day form planets, oceans, rocks, and living beings. You might picture each star as a quiet workshop, a place where simple ingredients are combined into something richer. A star spends millions or billions of years at its task, humming away in the background of cosmic time. It shines, but it also shapes. In its heart, the light elements created in the early universe are transformed into the heavier ones that will become the bones of worlds and the chemistry of life. When the most massive stars reach the ends of their lives, they can no longer support themselves with fusion in the same way. They change, and part of that change involves releasing the heavier elements they have forged into the space around them. In many descriptions, this is portrayed as dramatic, as explosive, and indeed the processes are powerful. Here, for our purposes, we can think of it as a dispersal, or a sharing. The star has completed its workshop phase, and now it opens its doors, letting the materials it has created drift outward. Imagine a dandelion puff releasing its seeds into the air, or a tree in autumn letting its leaves go one by one. The leaves don't cling forever. They fall, they travel, they become part of the soil. In a similar cosmic sense, the enriched gas from stars doesn't stay locked away. It mixes with the surrounding clouds of hydrogen and helium, seeding them with new possibilities. Over long stretches of time, enriched clouds collapse again under gravity, forming new stars. Around some of these stars, disks of gas and dust appear. Within those disks, particles collide and stick, forming larger and larger clumps. Small rocky bodies grow into planetesimals, and through countless gentle and not-so-gentle encounters, some of these grow into full planets. You can imagine a wide, flat ring of dust and gas orbiting a young star, slowly clumping and smoothing, until dots of matter become worlds. Our own solar system formed from one such cloud about 4.6 billion years ago. By then, the universe was already old compared to the lifetime of a human, but still in the middle chapters of its story. A region of enriched gas collapsed, spun, and flattened into a disk around a new star, the Sun. Within that disk, bits of rock and ice collided and stuck. Over millions of years, they grew into the planets we know: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and beyond. Earth settled into an orbit at just the right distance for liquid water to remain stable on its surface. On that small blue world, conditions gradually emerged that allowed chemistry to become biology. The details of how life first appeared are still being studied, still partly mysterious, but we know that the atoms involved, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and others, were all forged in the hearts of earlier stars. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen in your lungs, all of it has passed through the furnaces of stars and the cycles of cosmic clouds. When you breathe in, right now, you are drawing star-made atoms into your body. When you exhale, you are releasing some of them back into the world. You are not a separate thing dropped into the universe from outside. You are the universe, rearranged, temporarily taking the form of a person lying in bed, listening to a quiet story about beginnings. There is a deep, gentle comfort in that realization. The story we have followed from a hot, dense to early universe, through smoothing and glowing fog, through the first light and the long night, through the birth of stars and galaxies and the enrichment of matter, flows directly into you. The thread we talked about before is not just metaphorical. The atoms that make up your body have been on a journey since the first moments of time, participating in processes that span billions of years. And now, for a tiny, precious while, they are arranged in a pattern that can think, wonder, feel tired, and long for rest. As you lie here, you might picture yourself as a small glowing point within a vast web. The web is made of galaxies and clusters, stars and planets, all connected by gravity and shared history. Some threads are thick and bright, others thin and delicate, but everything is part of the same grand structure. You are one of the places where the universe has become aware of itself, one of the spots where the cosmic story is being quietly retold, in the dark, in a human voice. You don't need to carry the weight of that story, you don't need to remember all the phases or all the terms. It can be enough simply to feel that you belong in this universe, that you are not an accident dropped in from nowhere. You emerged from the same processes that gave birth to stars and galaxies. You're made of the same matter that once floated in glowing fog, once burned in the hearts of distant suns, once drifted as dust in interstellar clouds. If your mind wants to wander now, let it. It might return to the small details, the idea of an early universe glowing or of the first stars lighting up a cosmic night. It might drift to entirely different images, a childhood memory, a place you love, a face you miss. All of that is allowed. The story will still be here, stretching calmly into the background like the night sky. You can float between thoughts and images and half dreams without needing to hold on tightly to any of them. Perhaps you're starting to feel a little further from the day, less attached to the lists and conversations and screens that filled the hours before this. The universe outside your walls continues its slow work. Galaxies moving, stars shining, planets orbiting, the cosmic background light whispering across space. None of that requires your attention. The cosmos does not need you to stay awake to keep it going. You're allowed to rest. In the next part of our journey, when your mind is willing, or when another night calls you back, we can gently weave this cosmic story into the small details of your everyday life. We'll look at ordinary objects and see the universe in them. We'll feel the rhythm of the cosmos echoing softly in your breathing. But for now, here in this moment, it's enough to know that from a quiet birth, through a long unfolding, through stars and dust and time, the universe has arrived at you, here, tonight, wrapped in blankets, with eyes heavy, listening at the edge of sleep. If you found your way back to the surface of this story, if your mind has drifted out and in again like a slow tide, you're very welcome here. And if you only caught fragments of what came before, the glowing fog, the first stars, the long cosmic dawn, that's perfectly okay. You don't have to keep track of it all. You can join the story wherever you happen to wake up inside it. The universe has been patient for billions of years. It can certainly be patient with a sleepy mind. For a moment, let's gently bring your attention back to the room around you. You don't need to open your eyes. In fact, it might be nicer if you keep them closed. Just sense the shapes and the presence of things near you. Maybe there's a phone or tablet resting within reach. Maybe a glass or bottle of water sits on a wall bedside table. Perhaps there's a lamp, a book, a curtain, a piece of clothing draped over a chair. Each of these things feels ordinary, familiar, so woven into your everyday life that you almost never think about what they are made of. But in the soft light of this story, we can look at them differently. Imagine the metal inside your device, the copper in its wires, the aluminum or steel in its body, the tiny traces of rare elements buried in its circuits. Those atoms were not made in factories. They were assembled long ago in the hearts of stars and in the violent endings of massive suns that scattered their contents across space. The plastic casing began as molecules drawn from oil, which itself came from ancient life compressed over millions of years, a chain that ultimately traces back to sunlight falling on early Earth. Even the glass of the screen or your window began as sand, as silicon and oxygen bound together by deep geologic processes. Think of the water in that glass, if there is one nearby. Each H2O molecule is made of hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen atoms, those tiny, almost weightless pieces, are among the oldest things in the universe. Formed shortly after the Big Bang, when the cosmos was still a hot soup. The oxygen atoms were built later, in the cores of stars that fused helium into heavier elements. Those atoms travelled through interstellar space, joined clouds of gas, became part of planets, cycled through rocks and oceans, and eventually somehow found their way into this glass of water beside your bed. When you drink, you take in the memory of stars. Even your blanket and pillow carry this cosmic heritage. The cotton in the fabric or the synthetic fibers, the stuffing inside your pillow, all of it is structured from atoms whose lineage reaches back to that universe. The softness you feel is a property of how those atoms are arranged, how they bond and bend and slide over one another. The warmth you feel is a kind of gentle, random motion of molecules, slower now than in the hot plasma of the early cosmos, but still dancing, still alive with energy. Everything in your room, from the smallest speck of dust to the largest piece of furniture, is a local temporary arrangement of universal material. And of course the same is true for you. Your bones hold calcium and phosphorus forged in stars. Your muscles and organs are made of complex molecules built around carbon, another gift of stellar furnaces. Even the thoughts passing through your mind, the ones hearing these words, ride on electrical and chemical activity in a brain made of all those ancient atoms. You are not separate from the universe we've been talking about. You are one of its late and intricate experiments, a small region where matter has learned to reflect on its own origins. Notice your breathing again for a moment. No need to change it, just feel it. Air flowing in, chest and belly rising. Air flowing out, chest and belly falling. Inside your lungs, oxygen molecules that were once in rocks and air and water bind to hemoglobin and travel through your blood. You inhale the outside world and, in a way, briefly make it part of you. When you exhale, you return some of it back. There is a constant exchange, a rhythm of taking in and letting go. The universe itself has a rhythm too. On the largest scales, space is expanding. Galaxies drift farther apart over time, not because they are flying through space like bullets, but because the fabric of space between them is stretching. It's not something you can feel in your bedroom. The expansion is incredibly gentle on small scales. Gravitational bonds like the Earth's orbit, the pull that keeps you on the surface, or the molecules in your body stay intact. But across the vast reaches between galaxies, it adds up. If you like, you can imagine your breath as a tiny echo of this cosmic motion. As you inhale, imagine the universe as it was long ago, smaller, denser, closer. As you exhale, imagine it expanding, making room, unfurling like a slow, vast flower. Inhale, a little more gathered, a little more compact. Exhale, a little wider, a little more spacious. Not in any exact or literal way, just as a comforting metaphor. Your breathing becomes a reminder that growth and change can be gentle, that expansion can be quiet. Try one breath like that. As you breathe in, think of drawing the universe closer, not in a way that makes it heavy, but as if you're hugging the story to your chest. As you breathe out, imagine that story stretching outward again, flowing back into the stars and galaxies, into the dark spaces between. You don't have to do this for long, you don't have to keep it up. Just 1 or 2 breaths, tying your small human rhythm to the grand, patient rhythm of the cosmos. Now, if it feels safe to do so, let yourself think about time, not as something stressful, not as a list of deadlines, but as an immense, soft background. The universe, as far as we can tell, has been evolving for about 13.8 billion years. Earth has existed for around 4.5 billion of those years, and life for most of that time in one form or another. Human beings, in anything like their current form, have been around for only a tiny fraction of that span, and your individual life, measured in years or decades, is a smaller fraction still. Sometimes that can feel unsettling. To see yourself as a short flicker in such a long sequence might make you feel insignificant, but there's another way to hold it. A way that can be deeply calming. Instead of seeing your life as small, you can see it as sheltered. All the billions of years before you were born were preparation. Time spent coaxing stars into being, forging elements, assembling planets, evolving life, building ecosystems, crafting cultures and languages and knowledge. The universe spent a tremendous amount of time getting ready for this specific moment. You, breathing in this room, listening to this story, in that view you're not small, you are cherished. You are like a delicate flower that blooms late in a season after a long preparation of soil and weather and growth. Your fears and worries, while real and worthy of compassion, exist inside a much larger field of stability. You're not carrying the cosmos on your shoulders, you're resting on it. If you imagine the entire history of the universe compressed into a single year, with the Big Bang at midnight on January the 1st and the present moment just before midnight on December 31st, humans would appear only in the last small sliver of that last day, perhaps in the final seconds. Everything you've ever known, every story, every memory, every worry happens in that narrow window. Rather than making you feel rushed, this can gently remind you that your presence is like a brief, precious spark in a very long night. A spark that does not need to blaze loudly to be meaningful. It is enough to glow softly, to exist, to feel, to sleep. When your mind starts replaying the day, or rehearsing tomorrow, you can hold it up against this broader canvas of time. Your tasks and problems do matter, because they matter to you and you matter. But they are also nestled inside a much wider, gentler context. The universe has taken its time to arrive at tonight. You're allowed to take your time in facing what lies ahead. There is no cosmic stopwatch counting down your worth. There is only the slow unfolding of events and your small, bright consciousness moving through them. On the largest scales of space, matter is not evenly spread. Galaxies gather into clusters, and those clusters arrange themselves into long, thin threads connected at nodes, with great empty regions in between. When we map these structures, the universe looks a bit like a giant web or sponge, a pattern of filaments and voids stretching across billions of light years. It's sometimes called the cosmic web. If you could float far above this pattern, outside of space somehow, and look down on it the way you might look at a network of roads from an airplane, you would see bright points where clusters of galaxies sit, and faint bridges connecting them. It's a beautiful, intricate structure, grown from the tiny ripples of the early universe under the influence of gravity. What's striking is that it resembles other patterns we know, the branching of trees, the spread of lightning, the networks of rivers on continents, the web of neurons in a brain. Consider your own brain for a moment, that delicate organ resting inside your skull. Neurons connect in vast networks, branching and linking, forming pathways through which the signals travel. When neuroscientists visualize these connections, they see shapes and patterns that, in some ways, echo the cosmic web. Obviously, the scales are impossibly different, but there is a kind of rhyming between micro and macro, between the structure that gives rise to your thoughts and the structure that holds galaxies. You might imagine very gently that the universe is like a gigantic brain in which galaxies are the nodal points, or that your brain is like a tiny universe where ideas and memories are stars. These images are not meant to be exact scientific statements. They are soft metaphors to comfort and delight the sleepy mind. They remind you that patterns repeat in nature, that there is a kind of harmony in the way things arrange themselves, from the veins in a leaf to the filaments of galaxies. You, lying in bed, are a meeting point of these patterns. Within you, intricate neural networks create a sense of self, of I, of awareness. Around you, the planet turns, embedded in hollow and galactic structures shaped by gravity over billions of years. It can be soothing to feel that you are not separate from these patterns, not an outsider looking in, but an expression of them, a place where the universe has folded itself into a shape that can notice its own beauty. As you rest, the universe keeps moving. Stars burn steadily, fusing lighter elements into heavier ones, radiating light into space. Some stars are just being born in thick clouds of gas. Some are reaching the ends of their lives and sharing their enriched material. Galaxies rotate, drifting slowly relative to one another. The cosmic background light continues to stream through space, a soft, ancient glow. None of this requires your involvement. You can sleep easily knowing that nothing depends on you holding it together. The cosmos has its own momentum. If your mind likes wow moments, we can offer a few, but gently, like showing you small, quiet treasures rather than fireworks. Astronomers estimate that there may be hundreds of billions of galaxies in the observable universe, each with hundreds of billions of stars. When you multiply those together, you get a number of stars so large that the brain can barely make sense of it. Yet here you are, under one of those stars, orbiting it on a small planet, aware enough to hear this and to feel the heaviness in your eyelids. The cosmic microwave background, the afterglow we talked about, has been travelling through space for more than 13 billion years. It has passed by young galaxies forming, by clusters assembling, by countless stars flickering on and off. And tonight, part of that ancient radiation is passing through the space around you, through the walls of your room, through your bee. It doesn't harm you. It's extremely faint. It's simply there, a quiet, constant reminder of the universe's early days, humming beneath everything. Light from the nearest large galaxy beyond our own, the Andromeda Galaxy, has been travelling for more than 2 million years to reach us. That means some of the photons that will eventually touch Earth tonight left their source long before modern humans evolved. They set out across the void when our ancestors were very different creatures. Those photons have crossed unimaginable distances, dodging nothing in particular, just moving through mostly empty space. And now they arrive, perhaps to strike the atmosphere, or a telescope mirror, or the surface of a mountain, and vanish in a tiny release of energy. The universe has been quietly sending messages like this for a very long time. You don't have to wrap your mind firmly around these numbers. You can let them wash over you, vague and shimmering. They are not meant to be burdens, but lullabies. For every overwhelming magnitude, there is a simple companion thought. You are safe here in your bed on your planet at this moment. All those vast distances and ancient times are not pressing down on you. They are background, like a mural painted behind a comfortable chair. Take another easy breath without forcing it. Feel the way your chest rises and falls. Imagine that each inhale is a small personal big bang of awareness. Your field of attention expanding slightly, noticing sensations. Each exhale is a gentle contraction, your attention easing back, your body settling more deeply into rest. The more you pay attention to this rhythm, the more you may find it slows. Or it might not. Either is fine. Nothing needs to be achieved. There is no correct way to rest, only the way that is unfolding for you right now. As you lie here, maybe drifting, maybe still quite awake, you're following in a long tradition. For tens of thousands of years, humans have looked up at the night sky and wondered about it. Around campfires, on mountain tops, in boats on dark oceans, in cities lit only by stars and flickering torches, people have traced patterns in the constellations and told stories about where everything came from. They imagined gods and animals and heroes in the sky, and they wove those images into their myths and rituals and daily lives. Later, with telescopes and mathematics, other humans rewrote those sky stories in new languages. They measured positions and motions. They mapped the Milky Way and discovered galaxies beyond it. They built theories about the Big Bang and cosmic expansion, about dark matter and dark energy. They launched instruments into space to look back toward the universe's first light. And all the while, in quiet observatories and busy labs, they carried their own worries, their own fatigue, their own need for sleep. By listening now, by letting your tired mind drift along the river of this story, you are joining that long chain of curiosity. You don't have to be an expert or memorize any details to belong in it. The simple act of wondering, of feeling a soft what if or how strange or how beautiful, connects you to everyone who has ever stared into the dark and asked questions. You're part of the same species, the same journey, the same universe. If you like, you can imagine those earlier sky gazers as distant companions. A person thousands of years ago, lying on their back in a field watching the Milky Way stretch overhead. A sailor on a ship steering by the stars. A child looking out of a window at a patch of night. You, in your room, are another point in that constellation of wonder. Even if you feel alone in this moment, you are connected by shared curiosity to countless others, past and present, who have gazed into the same darkness and felt the same quiet awe. You're allowed now to let that awe soften into drowsiness. The story does not need your full attention anymore, if it ever did. It's okay if the words begin to blur. It's okay if you only catch every third sentence or every 10th. You might find yourself drifting away mid-idea and waking up to a completely different one. That is often how sleep arrives, not in a clean break, but in a gradual dissolving, like ink spreading through water. If part of you is still listening, you can keep holding just a few gentle ideas that the universe is vast and old, that you are made of its ancient dust, and that your breathing links you to rhythms far larger than your own life, and that you're safe to rest inside all of this. The rest of the details, the stages, the terms, the numbers, can fade. They were never meant to weigh you down. Soon we'll let the story become even simpler, smoothing it into broad strokes and repeating patterns, like a lullaby with only a few phrases. We'll drift back through the cosmic timeline in imagination, from now to galaxies and stars, to the first light, to the warm beginning and forward again, over and over, each path softer than the last. But that can wait for a little while longer, or for another breath, or for another night. Right now, you are here, in the middle of the universe's long, gentle unfolding, with permission to close your eyes a little more, to loosen your grip on thought, and to let yourself be carried by the quiet. If you're still here with me, somewhere between waking and sleep, you don't have to remember exactly how we got to this point. Maybe you followed the whole journey, from your quiet room to the first light of the universe and back again. Maybe you slipped in and out, catching only fragments, like bits of a dream you almost recall. Either way, it's all right. The story is very big, and you're very human, and this moment is meant for resting more than remembering. Let's make everything simpler now. We've walked through details and phases and strange words, but in the end, the story can be told in just a few soft strokes. You can imagine the universe as a long, slow breath. First, there is a dense beginning, a bright, compact state where everything is close and hot and full of potential. Then, there is a gentle stretching, space unfolding, cooling, making room for new things to happen. The first light appears, travelling outward into the growing darkness. After a long quiet, stars wake up, galaxies gather, worlds form, and eventually you find yourself here, listening at the edge of sleep. Dense beginning, gentle stretching, first light, long night, first stars, galaxies, worlds, you. That's all you really need to carry now. Everything else can fade like distant echoes. If you want, you can turn this into a little mental rhythm, almost like a poem. On an inhale, you might think, dense beginning. On an exhale, gentle stretching. Next inhale, first light. Next exhale, long night. Then first stars, then galaxies, then worlds, then finally me, resting. You don't have to do it out loud. You don't have to do it for long, just a few breaths if it feels comforting, tying yourself to a story that is both vast and very simple at heart. Now let's turn this story into a dreamlike journey. Imagine yourself once again lying where you are, in your room, body gently supported, covered or uncovered in whatever way feels right. Imagine that as you breathe, your awareness becomes lighter, like a small glowing seed. With each exhale, this tiny point of awareness floats upward just a little, until it's hovering a few centimeters above your body, watching you rest. You're not leaving yourself. You're just adopting a different perspective in imagination, for a small part of you is moving gently back and forth between your thoughts and a wider view. Let this little point of awareness drift up toward the ceiling. It passes through the roof, through any floors above, rising into the open night. Your body stays exactly where it is, safe and still. This is just a quiet picture in your mind. Above your home, you see the familiar landscape below. Rooftops, trees, streets, maybe a faint glow of city lights or the deeper darkness of countryside. The air around you is cool and silent. The sky above you is dark, sprinkled with stars. As you float higher, the details of the ground blur, like watercolor paintings fading into one another. What remains is the sense of up and away, of soft distance increasing in every direction. You drift past the clouds, past the higher reaches of the atmosphere, until the curve of the earth appears beneath you. Our world looks peaceful from here, wrapped in its thin shell of air. White clouds swirling above blue oceans and mottled land. Day and night share the planet between them, a slow line of twilight always circling. Somewhere down there your body is resting, like a single quiet grain of sand on a vast beach. You don't need to find it. It is safe where it is. Now, feel yourself drifting farther out, into the dark. The Earth becomes a small sphere behind you. The moon circles patiently, a pale stone companion. The sun glows at a distance, a warm lantern at the centre of its family of planets. Time begins to feel a little different here, slower, more fluid. You're not in a hurry. There is nowhere you need to get to because every place is part of the same continuum of space and time. As you continue to drift, imagine that time begins to flow backward very gently, like a river slowing and turning to trace its own course upstream. You're not forced along, you're just carried, peacefully as an observer. Galaxies that were far apart begin to draw closer in this reversed flow. The universe on the largest scale starts to look a little more compact, a little more crowded, although from your vantage point it remains serene. You pass the familiar era of your life without needing to see any detail. Days and years slide past you like pages turning in a book you've already read. You drift past the formation of human cultures, past the appearance of the first humans, past the long ages when other forms of life walked and swam and flew on Earth. All of this goes by in a blur, so fast and so distant that it doesn't cling to you. You're just floating along the river of time as it runs in reverse. Farther back in this gentle backwards drift, the Earth itself is younger, its surface more unsettled, its continents and oceans still learning their shapes. Go farther still and the Earth is not yet formed. The matter that will become it is dispersed in a disk around a young sun, grains of dust and ice colliding and sticking over vast periods. But you don't need to stop here. Time continues to unwind softly. The sun, too, reverses its life, becoming younger, smaller, finally not yet a star at all, but part of a contracting cloud of gas within a spiral arm of the Milky Way. You see the galaxy as a glowing swirl of stars and gas, but in backward time some stars are unforming, unravelling their futures, returning material to the larger cloud. Everything feels fluid, yet calm. Nothing is lost in a jarring way. All changes are just different arrangements of the same cosmic substance. Continue backward, and the Milky Way itself is less defined. Part of a younger universe where galaxies are just beginning to take shape from clumps of matter and gas. Stars wink out in reverse, collapsing from bright points back into the smoother distribution of hydrogen and helium from which they came. The cosmic web, that great network of filaments and clusters, is fainter now, its pattern less pronounced, like pencil lines being slowly erased. Keep drifting back and light sources grow rarer. You pass through the era we called the cosmic dawn in reverse. Galaxies dim and fade, the first stars wink off one by one like candles being gently blown out after a long evening. The darkness deepens, but it is not an empty or frightening darkness. It is soft and quiet, like a thick blanket wrapped around a sleeping child. You float in it safely, held by the very fabric of space-time. Now you've arrived back in the cosmic dark ages. There are no stars shining here, no galaxies you can see. Space is filled mainly with neutral hydrogen and helium spread fairly evenly. In this era, time feels incredibly slow. The universe is still expanding, but in our reverse journey, you sense it contracting slightly, becoming marginally denser. Around you, there is a faint afterglow, the cosmic microwave background, still bright in this youthful moment of the universe. It bathes everything in a uniform, gentle light. Let yourself float in that glow for a while. In your mind's eye, you might imagine it as a soft, warm colour filling all directions equally. There is no up, no down, only an endless glowing everywhere. You are like a tiny, relaxed presence floating in an infinite, luminous ocean. The light is not harsh. It is soothing and even, like the most delicate dawn spread across the entire sky all at once. If you feel any remaining tension in your body, imagine this light washing over it, smoothing it, dissolving it. As we move still farther back, this afterglow grows more intense. We're approaching the moment when atoms have not yet formed, when the universe is still a fog of particles and light. But before we go there, you can pause here as long as you like. This is a good place to rest in your imagination, a universe that is young and simple, filled with light, not yet full of complex structures or sharp contrasts. Everything is close and connected. Everything is one. If you're still awake enough to notice, you might feel your own thoughts beginning to mirror this simplicity. Details fade. The urge to analyze or remember softens. You might only sense broad impressions: warm, dark, light, gather, rest. These few words are enough to carry you like stepping stones across a very slow river. Now, just for a moment, let's drift a little farther back toward the earliest conditions we talked about. As time rewinds, the universe becomes hotter and denser. The glowing light around you brightens and shifts, but we can choose to perceive it as a gentle brightness, not as something overwhelming. In this reversed view, particles and radiation become more tightly coupled. The fog thickens. Space itself seems to shrink, as if the vast distances between points are being folded in. Soon we reach a boundary in our understanding, that bright, compact heartbeat at the beginning. Our theories blur here. The page of the book becomes hard to read. Rather than forcing ourselves to see clearly, we can allow this region to remain symbolic in our minds, a soft, luminous cloud where words fade and concepts fall away. You do not need to know what really happens here. You can simply float at the edge of this cloud, letting it stand for the deep mystery of beginnings. At this edge, you might imagine that noise grows quieter instead of louder. The closer you get, the more the universe becomes a single tone, a single colour, a single feeling. That feeling might be something like pure potential, all futures wrapped together, waiting to unfold. You can rest here the way you might rest at the edge of sleep, in that hazy borderland where dreams begin to take shape, but haven't yet fully formed. Now, rather than going any farther, we'll turn around. In your imagination, you slowly reverse direction. Time begins to flow forward again, gently and without pressure. The luminous cloud behind you recedes. The foggy early universe expands and cools. Particles dance and separate. The cosmic soup evolves. You don't have to track each step, just hold the sense that things are opening. Atoms form, the glowing fog thins, the afterglow, now the cosmic microwave background, streams out into space, carrying with it the subtle pattern of tiny ripples. The long dark ages come again, but this time you know that they are not empty. They are pregnant with possibility. Gravity tugs on small variations, drawing gas into clumps. The first stars ignite like candles in the night. Galaxies gather, spin and dance. Heavier elements are forged. Planetary systems form. On one small world in one ordinary galaxy, chemistry shutters into biology and biology into consciousness. In this forward flow you exist as a quiet inevitability, a late bloom on a very old branch. The details of evolution and history and personal life can feel complicated up close, but from the vantage point of this cosmic journey, your presence feels like a natural extension of everything that came before. You are the universe noticing itself for a while, from the vantage point of a human life. Let this whole story backward and forward compress into a single slow wave in your mind, beginning, unfolding, glowing, forming, living, resting. The specifics can now dissolve into that wave. When you inhale, you might think only beginning. When you exhale, resting. All the long threads in between are implicit, contained in that simple paired idea. The universe begins, and eventually, in you, it rests. Bring your wandering point of awareness gently back now, drifting through stars and galaxies, through the dark between them toward the spiral arm of the Milky Way, toward the small yellow star we call the Sun. Drift down past planets and moons, past Earth's blue and white surface, down through the atmosphere, through clouds and air, back to the building or house or room where your body lies. See yourself again from above, a figure resting, wrapped or uncovered, muscles slackening, breath moving steadily. Let your awareness settle slowly back into that body, like a feather returning to the ground. Feel again the contact points, head onto pillow, shoulders on mattress, back, hips, legs, heels. Notice the blanket or sheet, its weight, its texture. Your breath is still here, in and out, without rush. You're back in the present moment, though now it might feel bigger and quieter than before, as if you're holding a little bit of the universe's calm inside your chest. You don't need to do anything with this feeling. You don't need to protect it or analyze it. Just notice it and let it be. If your mind wants to wander to everyday concerns again, that's okay. You can always let them float into the box on the shelf in your imagination, closing the lid until morning. For now, there is nowhere you must go, nothing you must decide. The universe has taken care of the past. The future will arrive in its own time. This moment belongs to you. If sleep is near, if your eyelids feel heavy, if your thoughts are becoming slow and stretched, you can allow yourself to sink into that. You're safe here. You're allowed to rest. You're not falling behind. You're not missing anything. The stars will continue to burn. The galaxies will continue to move. The story will continue whether or not you're awake to hear it. You're simply finding your place in it, as a living being who sometimes needs to close their eyes and drift. You might even whisper to yourself in your mind or under your breath, "I am made of stars. I am allowed to sleep." Let that phrase, or any gentle variation that feels right, repeat a few times. I am made of the universe. I am allowed to rest. Each repetition can be softer than the last, like ripples fading on a pond. Before we fade fully into silence, we can briefly touch the path we travelled one last time, like running a fingertip along a familiar map. The universe began in a dense, hot state. It stretched and smoothed, light escaped and has been travelling ever since. Darkness had its long, patient hours. Stars were born, lived, and shared their elements with space. Galaxies unfurled like luminous whirls. Planets formed, cooled, and in at least one place life appeared. Eventually in that life, awareness arose, and among the countless tiny points of awareness spread across this one world, there is you, here, now, listening. That is the arc, from the quiet birth of the universe to the quiet of your room, from an early glow filling all of space to the soft glow of whatever dim light you may or may not still have on, from the first pulses of energy to the gentle beating of your own heart. It's all connected, not in a mystical way that demands belief, but in a simple physical way. The atoms tell the story for you. Whatever tomorrow holds, a busy schedule, a slow day, uncertainty, plans, it can wait. Tomorrow belongs to the part of you that moves and speaks and decides. Tonight belongs to the part of you that needs rest, that needs to let go of being a person for a little while and return to something quieter, more elemental. In sleep, your brain will tidy and file and repair. Your body will restore itself. You don't have to manage any of that. You only have to allow it. So, as we come to the softest edge of this story, let the words themselves begin to thin out. Imagine the voice you're hearing as a distant star, growing fainter not because it has gone away, but because you have turned gently inward, toward your own inner night sky. If you're still awake, you might hear a few more lines. If you're already half asleep, they might blend into dreams. Both are perfectly fine. You're safe. You're held by gravity, by the bed beneath you, by the air around you, by the long history that led to your existence. You're allowed to rest. The universe can wait. The universe will wait. It has always been good at that. If thoughts come, let them be like stars on the edge of your vision, there but not demanding focus. If your body needs to shout, to let it do so and then settle again. If your mind wants to follow the story back to the beginning or forward into the future, gently guide it back to something simple. Your breath, the feel of the pillow, the knowledge that you are here, beginning, unfolding, resting. You don't need a final sentence. You don't need a clear, sharp ending. Let this night be open-ended, like a sky without fences, like a story whose last pages are written in silence. Let yourself drift, and if you haven't already, let sleep find you quietly, gently, like starlight crossing the long dark to settle on a world that, for now, is at peace.